It's mock draft season, and the San Francisco 49ers have a major need for speed, particularly you get younger, faster on the offensive side of the ball. Locked On 49ers, mock draft 1.0, and some potentially big names in free agency and trade that the 49ers could add pre-draft on today's episode of Locked On 49ers.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker at BD Peacock at Coach Crocky. Thanks, everybody, for making us your first listen on the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Love our everydayers. Thanks for hanging with us, and thanks for making us the number one sports podcast network. It's time to get into mock draft season on today's episode of Locked On 49ers, which is brought to you by FanDuel. And the winter games are on at FanDuel, and there's no better way to follow them than to bet on FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. All right, Croc, let's get into free agency offseason mode. The season is over. We're not going to dwell on who won the Super Bowl. Well, we're looking forward to who's going to win the next Super Bowl and how the 49ers can potentially get there. And you're going to find a theme in this mock draft and in some of the things that I'm projecting the 49ers could do here in the offseason. Now, this isn't a 100% projecting what I think will happen. We'll get a better clue of that. And then that's always fun at the end of the draft season to kind of put that out there and be like, this is what I am projecting and what I think will happen for the San Francisco 49ers during the draft. Until then, it's going to be probably a combination of those things, kind of what I would do. Croc, I'm sure you'll do a mock draft with what you would do, but this is a little bit more about my projection for the 49ers and particularly to try to get them a little bit faster. Now, the 49ers are a good chunk under the salary cap, Croc. And so that, Brandon Ayuk, some of that Brandon Ayuk money is going to come off the books. And so the 49ers do have an opportunity to make a splash. And I just think there's going to be some urgency from the 49ers, not only because their division rival Seahawks won the Super Bowl, but because it's time for the 49ers after a soft reset last year and had a lot of dead money to come back at this thing a little bit harder. We saw the Seahawks and the Patriots were 1-3 in the NFL in free agency, in adding players in free agency last offseason. So it is a viable way to help fill some of your holes. And I do think free agency and trades is a better way to attack needs, and you should try to go more best player available in the draft. Now, we know the 49ers haven't fully done that. So, we can sit here today and look at, okay, what position do the 49ers have open for a starter right now today? And it's probably wide receiver and guard. So if I was to say, I am guessing this is what's going to happen in the draft, it'd be a wide receiver and a guard with the first two picks, right? Just because that's the way the 49ers have typically operated. I didn't go exactly that direction with this mock draft, but do you sense that, Croc? I get a feeling the 49ers have potentially one or two big moves up their sleeve, potentially one big free agent signing, and then one big trade even before we get to the draft. So I have one piece each before I get to my mock draft here.
Yeah, I mean, you want to use the free agency to fill holes, and then that makes it to where during the draft you can go best player available, and that's the best ideal situation. I think where the 49ers are right now, though, is trying to stay younger while not trying to spend an immense amount of free agent money, especially on pass catchers. We've talked a lot about the usage of these guys, the target shares. How can the 49ers sign a big name wide receiver or whatever and justify it when we see the production kind of be up and down? So I think for the 49ers, the best way to go potentially, especially at the receiver position, is probably the draft. The only issue with that is historically Kyle Shanahan hasn't gotten let me rephrase it. The production that he has gotten out of guys, I'd say outside of maybe Debo, seems a little forced. He talked about Brandon Ayuk, and he's like, well, if guys weren't injured, Brandon Ayuk wouldn't have played as much as a rookie, right? So we kind of know the way he thinks. He wants guys to come in locked and loaded, ready to go. It's a complicated offense for guys to really pick up. He obviously has a different coaching style than what a lot of these guys are going to get coming out of college. So there's a lot of different ways to kind of spin it, but ultimately I think I would agree with you. Wide receiver, offensive guard, definitely the biggest needs. If you go receiver, is that player going to be as impactful as you ideally would like him year one? I think that's going to be a big question.
I'm going to start this thing off with a bang as far as projecting some free agents here. And I I would love for the 49ers to go all in at center. I think it could be a huge force multiplier for the 49ers offense to go from Brendel, who's been a nice story for the 49ers, and upgrade to one of the best centers in the NFL, which is Tyler Linderbaum in free agency. And centers cost a lot less than offensive tackles do. And so I think you could sign him and still not necessarily break the bank. And I think it would be massive for the 49ers offense as a whole to bring in someone like Tyler Linderbaum, whose fifth-year option was not picked up. So still a young player. And so, I'm not into adding all the old pieces. I'm not into getting older and slower for the 49ers. You want to be more athletic. You want to be younger than what they already have with pretty much every move I make in this mock offseason and mock draft. It would be awesome to start with Tyler Linderbaum. I just don't think the 49ers are going to do it. I would go after him as hard as you can. I don't think the 49ers are. But I did project a free agent signing that is a pretty big swing, and he would be even cheaper than Tyler Linderbaum. And what's crazy about the tight end market, Croc, is signing Falcons tight end Kyle Pitts, former number 4 pick in the NFL draft. He went to pick right after Trey Lance to the Atlanta Falcons. Signing him would be projections show that signing him would be about $10 million per year less than Juwan Jennings. Tight end money for a high-level tight end, the tight end money just hasn't caught up. I think it's some of the best money you can spend in the NFL because running past what a tight end can do in your offense. The thing I love about Kyle Pitts, he would make the 49ers instantly more athletic. He would instantly give the 49ers a playmaker on the offensive side of the ball, help out spacing with the run game. Even if he's not an elite blocker, he could play some wide tight end, but he could replace potentially 2 guys in one for half the price and do the big slot. He's a move tight end, move him around. He could do some of the Juwan Jennings stuff and be your move tight end, your big tight end. But he could also line up in line and help take care of the snaps that the 49ers are going to miss from George Kittle, who's going to be injured to start the year. And the beauty of it is, and you might say, man, that's a lot of money to spend on 2 tight ends. Well, Kyle Pitts is still only 25 years old, and George Kittle's going into age, 33 season, I think? So even though they're only a couple draft classes apart, they're 8 years apart because Kittle was an older prospect coming out, and Kyle Pitts was either a redshirt sophomore or a true junior coming out of Florida. So, there's a pretty big gap there, and they can play together. And combined, Kyle Pitts and George Kittle, even if you have 2 of the higher paid tight ends in the NFL, that's like 1 elite wide receiver that you're spreading that money over 2 guys, right? So I don't know how realistic this is. I would go Tyler Linderbaum personally. I think the 49ers like Brendel, and I don't see them going that route. So I'm going to go Kyle Pitts, tight end from the Atlanta Falcons that the 49ers add, gives Kyle Shanahan a piece on offense, gives Brock Purdy somebody on offense while the 49ers wait to see what happens with George Kittle. I think tight end's a sneaky, really large need for the 49ers. So if they don't do something in free agency, then they're going to have to do something in the draft, potentially really high in the draft. But with a guy like Kyle Pitts out there, that's where I'm going with this move. And I think it'd be a lot of fun for the 49ers offense.
Yeah, he essentially replaces what Juwan Jennings is in this offense. You've called it for years now. Juwan Jennings is essentially a move tight end.
Yeah.
So he's a guy that, didn't quite threaten teams vertically down the field. You do love his blocking ability. And I wonder, if he had to block defensive linemen, would it look the same? Or is he capable of, just taking advantage of smaller defensive backs / outside linebackers? And if that's the case, Kyle Pitts, a guy who is not known for his blocking, but if you're talking about him split out a little bit more, will he be more aggressive blocking nickels and safeties and outside backs?
That's the thing. He's not known for his blocking versus like the best blocking tight ends in the NFL. But if you skew that for, okay, well, how is he as a blocking receiver? Well, he's one of the best blocking receivers in the NFL, if you look at it from that lens, right?
Right.
And you don't have to pay him as much either because tight ends just don't get paid that much, which is kind of crazy.
But he gives you the same, if not more, just athletic, freakish ability.
He's a lot
He's
faster than
bigger,
Juwan Jennings.
he's
Yeah.
faster. That's not to say that he's going to be a better receiver, but we've clearly seen like he rookie year, he was a 1,000-yard receiver. Now we haven't seen that version of him, and last year he had a good season. I think that was probably his second best season since his rookie year. But this is a guy who definitely not just makes the 49ers better in the passing game, but really makes them more multiple. And I look back to a guy like Delaney Walker. How did the 49ers use Delaney Walker while also having a tight end in Vernon Davis. They did a lot of different things with Delaney Walker, including having him return kicks. I don't see that in Pitt's future, but split out, H-back type stuff, being more multiple. Go ahead. You can play in that big slot role and run some out routes and catch the ball. And this year, it was fun watching him. I felt like watching him kind of get his groove back and continue to be more and more productive as the season went on. You pair him with a guy like Brock Purdy, and I think we see really a really good combination, a combo type player for the 49ers. So I would throw some money at that, and even making him one of the higher paid guys at his position still, like you said, is not sniffing what you would have to pay Juwan Jennings if you want to bring him back.
Yeah, number 2 receiver money is way bigger than top wide receiver money, which is kind of crazy. So I would probably bypass some of the wide receiver market. I'm seeing a lot of big names out there. They're going to make a lot of money at wide receiver. Smarter money, in my opinion, in the NFL is for tight ends. And the beauty of Pitts and Kittle, how awesome would that be with them together? And they absolutely can play together, so it would not affect them. And we're seeing what Sean McVay's doing, by the way, with 2-3 tight end sets. Maybe that's the way to go about this thing when you're playing against the Seattle Seahawks a couple times a year, and get a little bigger personnel while still being younger and faster than you were previously with that one.
I still can't believe they won the Super Bowl.
I got a trade on tap here and a couple other names to look out for in free agency, and then mock draft 1.0, 7-round mock draft for your San Francisco 49ers coming up next. Today's episode of Locked On 49ers is brought to you by FanDuel. The winter games are officially here, and if you're anything like us, you're locking in for events that you only get to see on the biggest stage every 4 years, and that's why following the winter games on FanDuel just makes sense. From medal counts to individual events to finding your angle on the sports you care about most, FanDuel gives you more ways to stay connected to all of the action, the drama of curling. Everyone becomes a curling enthusiast every 4 years, right? I know I do. The downhill skiing, the speed skating. It's first of all, just like the danger of some of these sports in the winter games. I downhill ski, and some of the stuff these men and women do is just absolutely nuts at how fast and the speeds they do it. Hockey, international hockey is phenomenal as well. Feels different from the opening faceoff. FanDuel keeps the entire Olympic experience engaging from start to finish. The winter games are on, and there's no better way to follow them than with FanDuel. FanDuel, play your game. Thanks again, everybody, for making Locked On 49ers your first listen of the day, and thanks for making Locked On the number 1 sports podcast network. If you haven't already, go check out our new Everydayer Club. You get access to an ad-free audio feed for Locked On, compatible with Apple Podcasts, Spotify, every other major podcast app, and an invite to a members-only Locked On Everydayer Club Discord server, which includes a group chat just for listeners of this show. You can talk trash to other fan bases, talk NFL draft, general conversations, college football, all of it. Just go to lockedon49ers.supercast.com or tap the link in the show notes to learn more. So, Croc, a couple of names. The 49ers, if they were to go guard, which I would prefer it if they could find the right player in free agency pre-draft so they don't have to force guard early. And just some names I'm going to throw out there. The top of the market, according to Sport Track, for market value is Buffalo Bills guard David Edwards. There's Braden Smith of the Colts, could play a little tackle guard. There's Ed Ingram of the Houston Texans, who's a little bit on the younger side, so that starts to get you a little bit interested. Still only just under 27 years old. There's some aging guys like Joe Bitonio out there. Elijah Vera Tucker, if he can stay healthy, still only 26 years old, a former New York Jet, could be one of the better guards in the NFL if the guy can stay healthy. I'm going to go down the list a little bit, though, and look at former Raider Dylan Parham, who was a player I liked in the draft. And he's only 26 years old. He's been in the league for 4 years with the Raiders. Could the 49ers bring in Dylan Parham as a player who could potentially be a starting guard and potentially even play some center at some point if the 49ers moved on from Jake Brendel too at some point? So, there's a number of names. Will they maybe just go ahead and bring back Spencer Burford? We'll see what that is. But just some names to watch at guard, I would say, as far as just youth. Guys that are just coming off their rookie contracts would be Ed Ingram and Dylan Parham. I don't know that the 49ers would spend a ton on guard, but it is their biggest need in the offseason. And after day two of the draft, they are for sure going to have added a potential starting guard, whether it's free agency, trade, or the draft.
I think with the found money with Brandon Ayuk, it allows you to take some of these bigger swings, even in
Mhm.
positions that you wouldn't maybe put a whole lot of money in. The 49ers have gone out and attacked those position guard and center and put certain resources towards it, but it seems like their biggest thing is really going into the draft and finding a day two guy, kind of plug in there, a guy who was a tackle, and let's move him to guard. We've seen them do that several times and actually play those guys a 10. So I wouldn't mind the free agent route right now. If we're talking about really doing a true kind of reload as opposed to rebuild, maybe you do go more the free agent route with the offensive line. We already talked about the tight end position. 49ers, though, they I feel like they always do the opposite of what I would do.
Yeah.
So it sounds like they're probably not going to go free agent, and they'll go on the draft, and they'll draft a tackle in the 4th round and convert him to guard.
Now, there's some wide receivers I think they could absolutely go after in free agency, but I just think it's not smart money with what Juwan Jennings is projected to get. Alec Pierce is a popular name. No way for what he's projected to get, in my opinion. Maybe some other guys that come a little bit cheaper. George Pickens is going to get the franchise tag, so he's not going to be an option for the 49ers. I don't know. He'd be a great fit and would be very costly. Romeo Dobbs, would he come in at a bargain number potentially? You start to have my attention there with some of those names. But Croc, I think the 49ers are going to find their starting wide receiver across from Ricky Pearsall via trade. And we've talked about some of those names. I think that is the big trade that could be coming for the 49ers is wide receiver. And whether it's A.J. Brown, even Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, I do think that we got a big-time tank going on with the Miami Dolphins. We did a podcast where we talked about all the names that were potentially available at wide receiver. I'm going to mix two stories together here and project a trade with the Minnesota Vikings, though. Not for Justin Jefferson, not available, guys. He's not happening. Max Crosby, not happening either. Jordan Addison is likely going to be available. And I truly believe now is the time to sell high on Mac Jones, and then you could potentially buy low on Jordan Addison. Now, I'm going to throw out the trade of just straight up Mac Jones for Jordan Addison, which I think is the absolute worst value from the 49ers perspective that could happen this offseason, right? So that would be like giving up, that'd be like trading Mac for a third and then sending a third to Minnesota for Jordan Addison, because I think Addison should come for less than a third because of the hot water he's potentially gotten himself into off of the field. Even though if you said a year ago, Croc, Mac Jones for Jordan Addison, it would be laughable how much more valuable Jordan Addison would be than Mac Jones, right? So this is a buy low, sell high situation with these two players. And I want to go to Albert Breer here, who had a report in it wasn't really a report, but it was in his mailbag a couple of weeks ago. Basically he said, quote, "Everybody, Minnesota would be a fun idea," talking about Mac Jones. "The Vikings will bring in competition for J.J. McCarthy, but may have to do it on a budget. Jones, who like Darnold before him, would be coming from San Francisco, would make a good amount of sense." So there's some connection potentially for the Vikings. Could be potentially, I don't know. Like I said, you could be trading Mac for a third, which I think would be minimum value, and spend that as trade one of your thirds for Jordan Addison. I think in all likelihood, you're trying to get a 2 for Jones and maybe sending a 4 for Jordan Addison, right? But just for the sake of not trying to game the system, because I know we get a lot of mock drafts that folks send us in on Twitter. Something like, "Hey, check out this mock draft." And it's like the most ridiculous, like not possible mock draft you see. I'm not trying to game the simulator, right? I want to live in the real world here and err on the side of it costs the 49ers more, not just some unrealistic thing where you give up a 5th round pick for George Jefferson or for Justin Jefferson or whatever. But Jordan Addison, Croc, Kyle Pitts, immediately the 49ers get younger, get guys entering prime years generally of their career, and get much faster before you even start talking about draft picks.
Yeah. Now, also, you're dealing with guys who I wouldn't even say baggage for Kyle Pitts, but obviously it's kind of up and down. It's a little weird, and people were questioning, is this guy a bust? He had a really good last year. Are you going to get the same version of Pitts that you saw in the contract year? Because we see that happen a lot. Then all of a sudden, guys aren't playing as well.
But imagine what Kyle Shanahan could do with an athlete like Kyle Pitts, right? Shouldn't that be just ridiculous fun?
So Kyle, everything that Kyle wants to do obviously kind of works off of run looks. So if you have a guy if you put him at kind of a fullback or excuse me, like a H-back
H-back,
type
yeah.
position, or a tight end, and he's kind of more of a true Y, man, just the things that you're able to do to kind of get him isolated on defenders and Kyle Shanahan, how good he is with attacking linebacker rules, I think. And then just the huge frame. George Kittle, not a little dude. Kyle Pitts, much larger, longer dude. So, I mean, and faster, especially at this point in his career. But I think he was faster even coming out of college. Excuse me, college. But just a better athlete, which is crazy because George Kittle is almost as good as it gets as far as being the athlete tight end position, especially with how he plays. I think he plays to his athletic traits. I think that would be a huge win for the 49ers. And then adding Addison. I do think the 49ers need a guy that can come in and play right now, understand the system. He's done similar things over with the Minnesota Vikings. I would go that route if I'm for that. That's me. I'm throwing out all kind of money, and I'm not even big on spending money in the free agency. But if you just told me, hey man, 3 things the 49ers really need to lock in on that would make them better, and you can kind of lock up some or shore up some positions long term, Linderbaum, Pitts, Addison. I think that would be a dream kind of offseason scenario that shows, the 49ers mean business, and they're really trying to make a run for the Super Bowl in the 2026 season.
Jordan Addison's doesn't cost a lot of money yet either. He's still on his rookie contract, so it's not expensive against the salary cap. You can see what he is. You would have to give up enough. You have to give up low enough trade value that, if he gets arrested, gets a DUI the day after you trade for him, you might have to cut him. Like you might have to release him, right? So that's why his value is lower. But just speed, they need someone who can win on the outside. That would be Jordan Addison for the 49ers immediately, which brings us, Croc, to my 7th round. The 49ers don't have a 7th round pick, but my 7th round San Francisco 49ers mock draft 1.0 as far as the podcast is concerned, Croc. Coming up. This episode of Locked On 49ers brought to you by TurboTax. It's draft season, which means it's tax season. But tax season doesn't have to take over your life. This year, TurboTax is making it easier than ever to just hand things off and move on with your day. From with YouTube with TurboTax with TurboTax full service, you can have your taxes done for you by a trusted local expert, start to finish, without the stress or guesswork. Instead of spending hours trying to figure out forms, you can meet with a local TurboTax expert in person or connect online. They handle everything: W-2s, self-employed forms, and work to get you every deduction. You can upload your documents, go about your day, get updates right in the TurboTax app. It's a huge time saver. And for a limited time, you can have your taxes done by a local TurboTax expert for just $150 all in. If a TurboTax expert did not file your taxes last year, just file by February 28th. So take taxes off your plate and get back to your life. Visit TurboTax.com/local to book your appointment today. That is TurboTax.com/local. All right, Croc, we're not done adding speed to the San Francisco 49ers here. Let's go to the first round, and let's go to last week's podcast where we scouted wide receivers. And I know there's a guy that you liked quite a bit. He was explosive. The 49ers would get themselves a new yak bro, but he wouldn't be expected to run right into the offense and be wide receiver 1 or 2 as a rookie. But man, he could be that slot guy early. You could move him around. You could do so many things as he develops, and that is Texas A&M's KC Concepcion. Really dynamic, fast wide receiver, 5'11", 190 pounds. I'm going to project him at a 4.42 40-yard dash. To be honest with you, my comp for him, I don't know if we talked about our comps during that podcast, Croc, but he's got a little Rashid Shaheed as far as like size, speed, how he plays, but I think a better receiver than Rashid Shaheed was coming out. Maybe not quite the return man, but that's the kind of dynamic athlete you'd be getting in KC Concepcion with the 27th pick.
Yeah, Shaheed is the guy who, the acceleration is through the charts. We saw him return the opening kickoff for a touchdown against the 49ers in the divisional round playoff game. So if you're telling me we're getting somebody that has that type playmaking ability, I'm all for it. But what we've seen so far from Concepcion as a route runner, as a receiver, I think he is made up of the good stuff. He's twitchy, he's sudden, he's limber. If you could kind of think of Dante Pettis, how he was as a route runner, right? He was a guy that was really kind of loose in his movements and almost looked like he was made of like rubber bands. Concepcion has that type of movement skill ability while also having like true speed, acceleration, quickness. Now, the big thing, right, which kind of you got to figure out from one player to the next, is he tougher than Dante Pettis? That was Pettis' kind of downfall, right? Just maybe not the most physically imposing guy. And Concepcion, not a big guy, but can he play strong? And I think that's the one thing I would love to kind of really get a grasp on from him. There were some other guys that we looked at. Mekhi Lemon. I thought Mekhi Lemon was someone who definitely played strong. I think he played a little bit stronger than Concepcion on film. So is that something that Concepcion can really improve on and implement? Because if you can't play physical or aggressive, you can't play in Kyle Shanahan's offense as a receiver.
Yeah. And
I remember watching Richie James, who was, probably the smallest receiver on the roster, and just throwing his body around out there, giving his body up, trying to just make blocks out there on the edge. So they put a premium on being able to block. And that would be the one thing I said, okay, what does that look like? Because you're not asked to do it as much in college, especially in a lot of these spread offenses.
Yeah, because the 49ers have brought in a lot of fast receivers, and none of them get on the field, whether we're talking about rookies, second-year guys, veterans, Travis Benjamin, they've always had a 4-3 guy on the roster who's just sitting there collecting dust. And so you got to have some utility to go along with your speed. And I think KC Concepcion does if he turns out to be that late first round type of a prospect. So a two-pronged attack at wide receiver, trade and draft, so you don't have to spend a lot of money there. I'm going to bring it up on the screen here, actually, and so folks can see kind of the whole mock draft. I want to talk about some of these things because I considered a number of things with the first round, Croc. And in fact, I traded down. I forgot about that for future considerations, too, to make it feel a little bit better about the KC Concepcion pick. I was thinking about trading back in with that extra draft pick that I got from a minor trade down, but it ended up not happening. I just went straight with it. So the Niners got an extra pick out of this for the 2027 draft, too. So if you don't like this mock draft, wait till the 2027 mock draft when I spend that pick. Maybe you like it more. I considered edge. I went round 2 edge instead. I do think the 49ers need to add speed off the edge. Again, speed, Croc. Need to add speed off the edge, some athleticism, and some pass rush. So if you are a defensive tackle, you are an edge rusher in this draft, you need not apply unless you can get after the quarterback. Joshua Josephs out of Tennessee can get after the quarterback, has one of the better pass rush win rates in college football, even though, as we saw last year with James Pierce, that Tennessee rotation on the defensive line is insane. They play half as many snaps as players on other football teams. It's so weird, but I think that's partially why it would help you get a guy like Joshua Joseph, who I think is, pretty much a first-round type of athlete and has length, and we'll see what he runs at the combine, but he has more length than some of the other guys. And I considered Cassius Howell, who's a short-armed, super athletic speed rusher. And another one of my favorites is R. Mason Thomas out of Oklahoma, who's a ridiculous athlete. He wasn't there in the second round. I thought it was a little rich in the first round, but in the end, I think R. Mason Thomas is going to blow up the combine and might end up being there. And I think, after the first couple of rounds, you're just not even going to have an opportunity to get one of these top outside pass rushers. And we saw what the Falcons did last year with the 49ers' new defensive coordinator in Raheem Morris, adding 2 stand-up rushers in the first round. James Pierce, that trade-up does not look good for them, even as good as a rookie with the whatever happened this
I think we were just talking about him, and then all of a sudden, it's like,
jeez, that story,
literally crashing out over his ex-girlfriend. Wow.
Oh, my God. And they don't have a first-round pick this year, and his Falcons career could be over. Like, this could be really bad. If you haven't checked out the James Pierce story from this weekend, go find that one. So I went edge in the second round with Joshua Josephs. He's becoming one of my favorites that could be outside of round 1 because he has athleticism and he has a little bit more length than R. Mason Thomas, is just a stupid athlete. And Cassius Howell was already gone by the time the 27 pick came up. I don't know if he will be gone because he doesn't have a ton of length. So those speed rushers are something to watch for the 49ers to go with Raheem Morris. And then in round 3, Croc, I went with Zakee Wheatley, who is a Penn State safety, 6'2". And what is he, Croc? He's fast. He is fast. 4.40 speed, likely, we're talking about for Zakee Wheatley. And he can play that deep center field. He's got range in the middle of the football field. Round 4, I don't think the 49ers are going to replace Drake Brendel, but I think if they're going to replace him in the future, they've got to draft that guy now and get ready. And one of the other things I considered in the first round, Croc, was an offensive tackle that could potentially play guard in year 1. I just the prospects that were there, I didn't really see that player, so I went ahead and went with Sam Heck, who I think is a future potential starting center in the NFL. Had an awesome Senior Bowl week out of Kansas State in round 4. Finished up round 4. The Niners have 3 fourth-round picks because they have 2 comp picks. Pick 133, Domani Jackson out of Alabama, athletic corner. When I'm talking athletic, there's a lot of fast guys in this mock draft, Croc. Fastest one of them is probably Domani Jackson. We're talking maybe 4.2s type of speed on the outside.
He was a Blazer coming out of high school.
Yeah.
I believe he went to Modern Day.
I think you were correct. Yes.
Yeah, and was doing big things there. Went to USC, transferred from USC. And, also something that should be noted. I believe he tore his ACL maybe his senior year of high school. So kind of put him behind the 8 ball a little bit heading into college. But he played at USC, transferred to Alabama, did well. But I believe he was like a top 3 corner in the nation when he was coming out of high school. So maybe didn't quite live up to that billing, but has that type of ability. Big time track guy.
This is a fun pick. 138 overall, Damon Claiborne out of Wake Forest. This dude has juice as a runner. He's not the biggest back. And I know some folks are talking about pairing a big back with Christian McCaffrey. But when you think back to all the big play running backs in Kyle Shanahan's offense, Damon Claiborne, man, this guy, he sees it, he hits it, and he can absolutely go. And he has a ton of speed, and I think the 49ers are missing that element out of the backfield in the running game, creating big plays. So Damon Claiborne would be that. And Croc, to be honest with you, when you look at his height, weight, speed, he's about 5'10", 190 pounds, 180-something pounds. He's going to run 4 threes. I mean, he is fast. It's not all that far off from Devon Achane, who was awesome.
I think we would all love Devon Achane right now.
Yeah.
Heck, you go back to Kyle Shanahan's first year, Matt Breida, not the biggest of guys, but was compact, had good contact balance, and then we also saw that breakaway speed that he had.
Been missing it since Breida, Elijah Mitchell. Obviously, Raheem Mostert is a big one. Damon Claiborne is a guy I'm watching out of Wake Forest. And then finished it up with an offensive tackle who is a project offensive tackle. Luckily, one position that the 49ers are good with development and offensive line coach. And this has kind of been the 49ers' MO. Everyone wants them to spend a lot in free agency or high in the draft. And I've got them going a little bit late rounds with the offensive lineman here. Emil Wagner out of Notre Dame, a really good athlete, probably a project swing tackle to start his career, but potentially could be a starting offensive tackle in the NFL with some development and work with pick number 171. All of my draft picks, athletic, Croc. The 49ers have the oldest offense in the NFL. They're one of the slowest teams in the NFL this year. They got to get faster. So free agency, if you're going to spend money, spend it smart, get younger and faster, get better. And the same with the NFL draft. So that is my mock draft 1.0 here for this offseason on Locked On 49ers.
I like it. Big time needs. And the thing I love most about it, the 49ers got faster on offense.
Faster ever.
And on defense with Domani Jackson.
And defense. Yeah, get faster ever. Zakee Wheatley's got speed out there. So the 49ers would have a showdown at the safety position. There's a number of free agents that could interest the San Francisco 49ers. Those were just a couple of them that I projected, but there's many more to talk about here this offseason, many more prospects to break down, many more mock drafts to come. So thanks for tuning in and thanks for making Locked On your number 1 sports podcast network. And Croc and I back tomorrow right here, Locked On 49ers.